All right, we're going to talk about functions and graphs today. So we're going to start off, we need to understand what a function is and what a relation is. So this is a lot of verbiage here. A function is a correspondence between a first set called the domain and a second set, the range, such that each member of the domain corresponds exactly to one member of the range. Okay, so basically this is saying you have your domain, your input values, they go to only one output value. So if I plug in the value 1, it will only go to one number. Okay, a relation is a correspondence between the domain and the range such that each member of the domain corresponds at least to one member of the range. This means that relation just means that there is some, when the domain happens, it is going to some value in the range. It could be going to 2 values in the range, 3 values, 4 values, so on and so forth. So we're going to look at a couple of different items here and determine if they're relations or functions. So the first one is kind of a mapping here. So this is our domain, our input here. So I'll put a D here. This is our range or our output. So when we're looking at these, we want to look at our domain. Is our domain only going to one value? So if I were to pick -6, -6 is only going to what value? 36. That checks out to be a function. 6, where is 6 going? It's going to 36. For a function, it's okay if all the values go to one value in the range. That's fine. They just can't go to more than one. So this here, notice every single one of our domains only goes to one range. So this is a function. Now we look at a set of coordinates here. So we have the set of coordinate of 9, -5, 9, 5, and 2, 4. Once again, so these are set up into x, y. X is our domain, y is our range. So I look here and I look to see if I have the same x that's going to 2 different y's. And in this case, I have a 9 that goes to -5 and a 9 that goes to 5. Therefore, it fails to be a function. Fails, okay? So therefore, it has to be a relation. Okay? The last one here is the coordinates -2, 5, 5, 7, 0, 1, and 4, -2. I look to see if there's any x's that are going to the same x that's going to 2 different y coordinates. Now I have 4 different x's. They're all going, doesn't really matter where they're going because they're all different. They're only going to one spot. So this is a function. Okay? And now we're going to talk about graphing. So we're going to look at graphing the function, and this is function notation if you don't remember. So we're going to look at graphing f of x equals x squared minus 5. So what we're going to do on this one is we're going to set up a table of values. All right. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to pick some x's and some y's. I'm going to pick some negatives. Let's go -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. And we'll kind of look to see how that works out. Okay. So I'm going to start by plugging in -3. So -3 squared. So this would becomes -3 squared minus 5. That gives me 9 minus 5, which is 4. Okay. Good start so far. I'm going to plug in -2. -2 squared minus 5. That gives me 4 minus 5. That gives me -1. Okay, it's still on my graph. Plug in -1. -1 squared minus 5 gives me 1 minus 5, which is -4. I plug in 0. 0 squared is 0. So that one's pretty quick and easy. So it's -5. Now I'm going to plug in 1. 1 squared minus 5. 1 minus 5 is -4. If you remember from before, parabolas are symmetric, and now we're starting to see a repeat here. If I plug in 2, I end up with 4 minus 5 is -1, and then this gives me 4. Okay, so now I'm going to plot these. Okay, this is my vertex here, so at 0 and -5, I have my vertex. 1 and -1 both go to -4. -2 and +2 both go to -1. And then 3 goes to 4, and -3 goes to 4. And I'm going to link all these dots together to form my parabola. Okay, so this is a function. Now, if I have a graph if I have the graph and I want to know whether it's a function or just a relation, I'm going to use what we call the vertical line test. What the vertical line test is for every vertical line, it will intersect that graph at most once. So that just means that if I were to draw a bunch of vertical lines, or if I came through here and I just kept on drawing vertical lines, every vertical line that I could draw would only touch it once. Okay? If it only touches it once, then it's a function. If it would intersect it twice or more than once, so this one, the y-axis is actually intersecting it 3 times, then it fails to be a function and it is a relation. Okay? So the vertical line test is very, very good, useful tool when we have a visual representation of that graph. Now, we're going to talk about the domain. Sometimes in our domain, remember our domain is kind of like our input. So our input might have restrictions. So in this first one here, we have 1 over x minus 7. Well, the problem is, if I have anything in my denominator, there's one value I cannot have in my denominator. I can't have a 0 in there. And so I really want to know what's going to make this 0. So I'm going to set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. So that tells me my domain restrictions. X cannot equal 7. I can't have the value there. And later on, we're going to talk about how to set this up into interval notation and the different notations. But right now, that's going to be my domain restriction. Okay? Now over here, we have a square root. And we can't take square roots of certain types of numbers. And those numbers are negative. So I need to know when this is going to be negative. Or I need to know when it's going to be positive. So when we're looking at the domain, there's a couple ways we can look at it. The first is, what values can't we have? Okay? And sometimes it's nice to write x cannot be 7, because that's the only value it can't be. Other times, it's nice to write what x can be. In this case, I know that I have to take the square root of non-negative numbers, so it has to be 0 or bigger. So x plus 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0. And now I'm going to solve this. So I'm going to subtract my 2, x is greater than or equal to -2. This is my domain. So this is telling me all my values of x. X has to be greater than or equal to -2. So that's functions and graphs.